Hello, clever people, and welcome to my review for Your Name. So Your Name is an anime film from Japan. It has been getting tons of critical praise. In fact, I believe that on a very popular anime website, it is currently the #1 anime film of all time, which is very impressive. And the film follows the story of a boy and a girl that through their dreams seem to switch bodies. The boy goes into the girl's body, and the girl goes into the boy's body. They live two very different lifestyles. One of them is in a small, remote town in the middle of nowhere that no one really cares about. The other lives in the big city of Tokyo. And it's about how these two people learn to adapt with what's going on and try to learn about why their bodies are always switching. I was ecstatic to see this film. It had been getting amazing reviews non-stop. I had heard so many great things about it. I was just honestly really excited to see this. I am glad that I got to go see it. It is not playing in my town, but I did travel down to Fresno, and I was able to see it down there. I was very happy I was able to see it. And I have to say that Your Name, while still really good, did not quite live up to my expectations. That is a bit unfair, granted, because I did have huge expectations for this movie. I was expecting on it like one of last year's best films. It is not quite there, but Your Name is still a very enjoyable, very touching, and very well-made film. This is not the type of animation you get in the States. Maybe you get it from Pixar, yet at the same time it has different vibes, so really, this is not the type of your typical animated movie. While it is PG, and while kids can find enjoyment in this film deals with a lot of mature themes, both about being a teenager and about having to worry about things that is really hard to stop. This film has a plethora of themes that are went into in a very creative and original way. Honestly, a lot of this film is very creative and original. I have not seen a lot of the things that this film does before. First off, the story in general is just extremely creative. Just the idea that two people switch bodies, that has been seen before, but the way that Your Name shows it on screen, how it's somewhat of a romance, how it's somewhat of a relationship between two friends, how they express that on screen was very creative and original. It sort of feels like The Shop Around the Corner. Now that feels like a weird film to compare it to, but that film came out in 1940 during the time that a lot of talkies, because they just were able to use talking pictures, a lot of the films around those era were sort of the same. They sort of felt like the same movie. And the reason that The Shop Around the Corner stands out is because of the way that it has a non-traditional story. You can try to predict things, but you're usually always wrong. And Your Name does the exact same thing. Trying to predict this movie is very difficult. It does not have a lot of cliches. It has a very original story that is practically relentless in its originality. They never stop to settle on one thing. They are always hopping around to plot point, new idea, new theme, and it's always very original and creative. And one of the best things expressed in this film is the idea of being a teenager, because they deal with the idea of expectations, knowing that you're expected to do things but not necessarily wanting to do them. The idea of love at that age, how you try to always stay away from it while so many people seem to be going around it. Also the idea of how being stuck in a small town makes you feel limited in who you are, and it sort of makes you wish that you could live in a different place. That is a theme I relate to a lot, because when moving back to where I live now, I miss San Diego a lot because of how a lot of things were constantly going on there. There's a lot of passion there. There was a lot of new things, and I always had wished to live in a bigger city, and moving to a smaller city just felt weird, and I didn't quite feel right in where I was, and they expressed that theme beautifully on screen. Something else that is beautiful in this film is the animation. This is honestly the greatest hand-drawn animation I have ever seen in a film, period. There is honestly no way that any hand-drawn animation will ever beat this. The colors, everything, just the attention to detail. This is honestly flawless hand-drawn animation. The aesthetic to it is absolutely stunning and gorgeous. just some of the shots of the sky, how they blend it with these blues and purples, and then you'd have shots of nature that are just filled with oranges and greens. It's nothing that is overly, overdone. Nothing about it feels like that. However, it is just so creative in its drawing. Everything feels like real life, while at the same time having a much more terrific aesthetic than real life, while at the same time it did not feel overdone. Just the hand-drawn animation in this film is phenomenal. And the body switching in this film is very, very creative. The way that they expressed the relationship between these two people, you felt like these two people had met each other, that they knew each other, that they knew what type of person each other was, even though they never really had time on screen together. You saw them talking to each other, you saw them writing hand messages to each other, but besides that, you did not really have a scene on where the two characters were looking at each other and talking, and I really enjoyed that. There are some issues in this film. Something that it does that I hate when animated movies do it, and this film does it, is that the characters feel the need to say what's going on to the screen. This is not as constant as some animated movies, but you do have a lot of times where characters will see something and say it to a screen, or a character is alone and they're saying, I don't know what it feels like to be in this body, where you could have just inferred that on the way that they were moving and walking and all that, and you didn't necessarily need to say it to the screen. And it also has a hard time finding its footing at first. At first, the movie just sort of starts in the middle, and that's the way that it should have been. However, there's a way to start in the middle so that it feels solid and you feel like you know where you're going. Your Name, at first, does not quite find its footing. At first, you're trying to get into it, and you understand the characters are confused, as you should be, yet at the same time, it sort of felt like that wasn't the intention. That wasn't the artistic intention behind why you couldn't quite get into the story at first. And towards the end of this movie, it becomes a bit epic. It becomes very grand in scope and in everything else, and it feels a tad overdone. Now, what I do like about it feeling so big and bombastic is that you felt the weight of the situation, and it expressed the theme of feeling responsible for something that you can't necessarily stop, and that's really hard to stop. And they expressed that theme well, but at times the film just got too epic for its own good. At times it just wouldn't stop. If you had it so that you had 15 minutes in the film that felt epic, that would make sense, but the entire third act is huge and big and bombastic, and that did not quite work. However, Your Name is still a very, very good movie. I would definitely recommend going to see this film. It is not my favorite. I do not absolutely love it. I'm not obsessing over it like I was hoping that I would. However, I still really enjoyed this film, and that is why I will give it a 7.5 out of 10. Alright, that concludes my review for Your Name. What are your thoughts on this film? Comment in the comment section below, and let me know. I'm Robert Burke, and this has been The Clever Critics. Goodbye.